Evening all. Daniel Hand, RPG therapist, joined by yet another friend and colleague who I've only known for 15 minutes, and yet, frankly, there's no getting rid of me now, Adam. Sorry, you're part of my life. Please join me in welcoming Adam Nash. Adam, welcome.
Greetings. Thanks for having me.
No, anytime. I know we literally just had this conversation, but remind me how we met, because I put a hi, does anybody want to talk on the geek therapy community? And
Correct.
You were one of the first people to go, me, hello, me.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Literally, I think it was probably within a week of me joining that Facebook group, I saw it pop up. And I was like, well, I'm a nerd, so yeah, let's do it.
Right.
So I just threw something in the chat, in the comments, and was like, yeah, go ahead. And then I think it's been probably a month since that happened of us just trying to find our schedules to align. So
yeah, what's it like for you generally over there? I don't know about you. I am so busy right now. Just the world's falling to pieces, and just, doing the whole Spider-Man thing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And our practice is in a little town outside of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And so I think in the area, there's probably 500,000 people in the area. And I think there's a total of maybe 6 clinicians in that area. Yeah. Cause we're kind of in the country. So there's not much around. So my wife and I, we run a practice together, open chair counseling, which is over this shoulder. We just recently are in the process of hiring 2 new clinicians to serve the community. So yeah, it's cool. The Spider-Man reference is pretty apt.
Yeah. Geez.
Hopefully I don't have to get carried back through the subway, because that sounds like no fun.
Yeah, I know, but what was it? Was it pitch meetings? There was a great line for that scene where I think he said, yeah, and then he stops the train with the power of constipation, and it just zooms in on Tobey Maguire's face.
I also always love about those movies that for some reason his mask would just come off, and you're like, why? Why did it come off that time? Which is super funny, because in the cartoon, the old cartoon, they did the opposite, where it would always stay on.
Mm-hmm.
Where he would get everything blasted and his mask would be perfect. And you're just I may be 10, but that doesn't make any sense.
Which old cartoon are we talking about? The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, or the 1960s one?
No, the newer one than that. So the 90s one, where where he couldn't hit anybody. He could only back spring into people, and he could never hit them. So yeah, that's what I grew up on.
No, see, I had the old Spider-Man cartoon, and that was the reason he never took his mask off in that, was because they ran out of budget, I think, some 2 episodes in, and so most of the shows were just the same pieces of footage just played over and over again.
Like your shirt, the Power Rangers, where all the in-suit stuff is from Japan or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the people don't make any sense. And in the original 1993 version, the Yellow Ranger is clearly a dude.
Yes. Yeah.
Classic. So good.
But yeah, I did. Yeah, I had a dream about Power Rangers a couple of nights ago. I've got no idea where that came from.
I mean, the question is, were you one of the Power Rangers, getting beat up by the Power Rangers, or just watching?
See, now already you've asked more than I can actually remember about it. All I just know, I'm not entirely sure the Power Rangers themselves were there. I think it was just the Zords. Okay. Because who doesn't want a giant dinosaur robot?
Yeah, that was just me slipping into Jungian, let's talk about dreams.
Hey, I am there for it. Oddly enough, I don't know if you've ever heard of this RPG.
I have not.
So
obviously, looks like tons of fun.
I haven't played it myself, but yes. But what sold it to me was I was in my local game shop. I just pulled it open, and it just flipped open randomly at that page. I'm like, I'm sorry, I get to play as a Power Ranger.
Yeah.
just take my money, take it.
Done.
And then of
Wasn't
course there is
wasn't
actually a Power Rangers RPG
yeah,
now, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember reading about the Power Rangers RPG because it had an interesting rule in it, and I was like, "This seems like an interesting game." Would feel like too much of a kid playing a true Power Ranger game, but it seems like it's pretty well done from what I could read.
Because it's one of those things. It's on the list, but it's a very long list.
Yeah.
So,
The endless list.
yeah,
It's like books, as you also have a ton of those behind you. It's like you always have more on the list. People ask you what you're reading, and you're like, which one of the 3 books do you want me to tell you about? Because I'm reading 3 right now, and then I probably have 2 more audiobooks. What was that?
Yeah, and there are 2 underneath those that I started a long time ago, but haven't actually read for a while. But do they count? Or
and then somewhere I have like my audiobooks too, or like, I'm listening to those too. And then there's like the 12 podcasts. It's just never ending. So.
And being as we're talking about never ending things, have you succumbed to the dice addiction?
I have not.
What's your secret?
I have a set that I got from a friend that rolls hot every single time I play with it. And so I have never gotten away from it.
Fair play. Okay.
Like
mine.
It's like one of those things. It's the ugliest set. It's purple and white. I think it's just boring and ugly. I hate it, but it's like, it never fails me. So I just can't, every time I'm thinking like, man, it's time that I get rid of this dice set. I just keep going. Just purple and white. So.
Yeah, whereas I've got Jesus. This is painfully heavy now. They all hate me. Seriously. I roll case in point, a few so like this weekend just gone. I was rolling terribly. Just and then I've got the dice that come from the Dragonbane starter set, and Dragonbane is the lower you roll, the better. So I got those out and just rolled a nat 20 on it, and it's just like, okay, look, I'm supposed to roll low and I roll nat 20. I'm supposed to roll high and I roll nat ones. Jesus, guys, come on, just somebody work with me here.
Yeah, the dice thing always to me is like, I just can't get in my head past like, the law of averages dictate that it's gonna basically work out to like between 10 and 11. Like, it's like, that's going to be your average dice roll.
Yeah.
So you're literally just buying them because they're cool. So, but
yeah,
I can tell you that my D&D stream has a relationship with the dice company. I can get you 10% off. So if you want more dice,
viewers, I'm sorry, we're going to cut this episode short right now. Thank you. Please join me in thanking Adam now. Bye. Okay, fine. Well, yeah, I know, but I'll show you some of them. Or once we're offline. But you can get, what can you get? You look.
Have you gotten into like the stone dice and stuff like that? That's like all the rage now.
Not yet. I've got stuff like metal coin dice where the balls come out the side, and dice that look like cheese, because who doesn't want dice that look like cheese? Look, I know it's an addiction, but hey,
you could have worse, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, worse and probably more expensive. So there are more bottles of whiskey down like underneath there that cost me way too much money in my life. So
yeah,
I'd rather dice than that.
Yeah, but whiskey goes up in value. If you don't drink it and just leave it there, it will just get more expensive over the years. People invest in whiskey, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. There's that one guy that has like, what is it, like $10 million or $12 million worth of whiskey in his house. It might even be more. I might be underselling it. He has 2 like underground vaults. It's insane. Look it up sometime.
I would just be terrified of having, just having a couple of drinks one night and going, do you know what? I just fancy another. Yeah, let's just have some. And I would just live in terror that I would
Right.
drink away my investment.
He talks about it on the one interview that I saw where he had some bottle that was like some scotch or something like that that was like valued at like a couple $1 million. It was like 25 years old in the barrel, and then it had been released in like the 80s or something like that. So the it's like what, 40 years old or something like that.
Wow.
And he's like, yeah, one night we were down here and we just decided to crack it open. And he's like, it was okay. So don't do that.
No,
That's
no,
the point.
just if you, yeah. Oh god. So, so as well as Power Rangers and whiskey, tell us a bit about yourself, your practice. So you
Yeah.
mentioned Jung, and is that your primary modality, Jungian?
That's a terrible question. Every time it gets asked, I hate that question of like, is it your primary modality? Because I I try my best to like be very, very versatile in a
Mhm.
therapy session. Um, where I am is like a pretty like where my practice is like pretty old school, very Christian, very old school. And so like if I start asking people the question I just asked you about a dream, they look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, why are we talking about dreams? I'm like, okay, like because it's probably telling you something about life, right?
Yeah.
So I use a lot of Carl Jung stuff. I use a lot of like imagery and like that kind of stuff in session. And then I've recently have become like obsessed with internal family systems and just like the
Good
like work,
obsession.
yeah, working with all those internal parts. And I think that that's all just based in like a ton of like Jungian stuff as well, where like, you know, you start getting into that and it's just so much there's so much stuff there that's so interesting. And I think to kind of bring that to like the RPG world, I think it's the same thing that we're doing when we're playing RPGs. We're like elevating parts of ourselves into the character, right? We're
Absolutely.
like, if you play a character in an RPG, it's going to be like, you know, certain parts of it are just going to be like elevated versions of who you are, right? Like all my characters are that I play are almost always kind of like have a tendency towards being rude because sometimes I can just be kind of rude, right? Like, that's just there. It just always happens. Um, they all end up having like stories of like the first character I remember ever playing in D&D, he had a story that was like, I grew up in the city and then I found out I loved being in the country more. And I'm like, that's exactly my life. Like, I just took me and made me like a superhero. So I think that same thing is like in internal family systems things where like there's certain parts of us that think they're superheroes and like try to like protect us and take care of us.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, well, I mean, internal family systems, but also systems
yeah.
work more generally. I mean, that I think you're absolutely right in bringing the RPG straight to it, because systems work is all about seeing the client, the patient, the individual
Mhm.
in terms of their relationships with the community, the people, the world around them, and then when you bring fictional characters into that, then you can kind of witness that character in terms of their relationships with NPCs, and that helps the client go, oh, so maybe I'm a product of the people around me as well. And yes, it's always I start. Sometimes I actually can't not laugh when clients create some characters, because it's sometimes it's not even subtly the same person. Sometimes it's like, shall we just give this character your name?
Yeah. Is this just Jimmy or whatever the
Yeah,
person's name
exactly.
is? Oh, I remember there was one time I was playing D&D with a group I was only in for a short while, and this guy was playing a druid. Okay, so like somebody who's supposed to be outside and all sorts of stuff,
Mhm.
and he's like, "Well, I don't really want to go on the adventure. I just want to stay in my hotel room." And it's like, so you're just playing yourself. Like you just want to stay at home. Like this is an adventure game.
Yes.
Go adventure. So yeah, it's always fun. It's also always fun to talk to people like so like in the RPG world, it's fun to talk to people about like their characters and how they have all these visions of their character being this thing. And then once they start to get like kind of like dysregulated because the game's not going their way, then they just start slipping back into themselves. And you can just watch
Yeah.
as they go from like all these character arcs they wanted, and then it's like, oh no, they're just being themselves.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that psyche thing where it's like you can't really hide your psyche for too long before it's kind of like get out. Like I'm going to show you what I'm actually am. So
Yeah. And the way I always think of that is that because it's a big thing, a big selling point of a lot of RPGs is, oh, you can play somebody who's completely unlike yourself, which, yeah, potentially. But even if you're playing somebody who's completely unlike yourself, you're only playing that character as you imagine being like that would be. And you can only imagine that according to your own approach to life, your own worldviews, your own, point of view. And so even if you try and play somebody completely unlike yourself, you're going to end up playing you anyway. Sorry, mate.
yeah. So just embrace it and play slightly different versions of yourself.
Yeah, this is why all of my characters are really grumpy first thing in the morning.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
You haven't had your tea yet.
yeah, or shot or anything. Just just
They all just wake up from their long rest like,
yeah, pretty much. Or you play elves, so they don't actually have to sleep. So yeah, they tend to be the happiest ones of the lot because I'll just meditate. I'm fine. I don't have to sleep.
Fair enough. I always notice that in so like D&D, I think this is a question later, but I'll just answer it now, which is like D&D is the one that I've played the most as an RPG. And I found it funny that I have always ended up just playing humans because I find that I can like mentally get behind the motivation of a bunch of other character stuff if I just play something like race wise that just makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I'm just like, oh, I'm a human. So like same thing for me where it's just like I'm limited based on my own ability to get outside my own head.
It's cool. Yeah, because I'm currently playing a half orc barbarian, and I'm playing her purely because there's a novel came out. I mean, it's not old, but it's certainly not brand new. It's called Legends and Lattes about a half orc barbarian who opens up a cafe, and it's just the picture on the front cover is just the most adorable thing ever. So I'm very fickle when it comes to my character designs. Like, oh, that looks cute, I'll play that.
Yeah.
The first character I ever created for a tabletop game was a wood elf spearman, purely because it annoyed me that wood elves were always seen with bows and arrows. It's like, no, he's gonna have a spear. And that was
It's the same way that right now I'm playing like a swashbuckler rogue because I hate the idea of like the rogues always just like sitting in like behind the tree and then popping out with their little hand crossbow. So I'm like, I'm gonna do something different. Like I'm gonna play a rogue, but it's not gonna be your typical rogue. Like
but the thing with rogues, and it does actually, it's in this campaign. I'm like, so I'm playing this half orc barbarian. My job is to chop things in half with one swing. We've got a halfling rogue in the party, and sneak attack damage dwarfs my attack every single turn. I'm like, I've just got this image of this, this thing the size of the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, being outshot by Frodo Baggins. It's just
Have you followed the one D&D stuff where they're trying to they're re-releasing the player's handbook next year?
Alas, I'm see the whole. I am very capitalist in my outlook. I think Wizards of the Coast, it's their product. At the end of the day, they can do or not do. Yeah. But I still think that it's a stupid idea, some of the things they're doing. And like the OGL business, that was only ever going to upset your fan base.
Yeah.
Sending the Pinkertons round because somebody reviewed some cards. Don't know how you thought that was going to look, mate. Yeah. It didn't look very good.
No, they have not done a good job with managing their their fan base at all over the last little while. And then in addition to that, apparently they also announced that they're still doing 6th edition at some point. So the one that's coming out next year is supposed to be 5.5. It's revised 5.0.
Yeah.
But then they announced that they're gonna release 6th edition at some point.
Oh, I hadn't. I thought the one that was coming out next year, that was officially kind of the next update, and then watch this space. Oh, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, so they're releasing basically 5.5 is releasing next year, and then I think within the next 3 to 5 years they're gonna release 6. So they're releasing this book, this player's handbook, and this new Dungeon Master's Guide just to then re-release it. And it's tons of people are just going to stick with 5.0. It's been the most popular one.
Yeah, but then I think they're probably banking on people's short-term memory loss because the whole OGL business happened. People quit D&D and Beyond, and then 6 months later, people are back on D&D Beyond playing 5e. So I personally am trying to put my foot down with my own players, saying, no, there are so many other games. Let's play some of those. But it's just one of those things at the end of the day, isn't it? We've got to take the world as it comes, not as we would have it.
Well, it's the most popular RPG that to ever exist probably at this point. And, to their credit, it's they immediately backed off of it. Not immediately, but they fairly quickly backed off of it and then released everything out as this is open content and everything like that.
Yeah.
It's good for them. But to your point, it's what were you even thinking?
Yes.
Who sat on an advisory board and was this is a good idea.
Yeah.
We're going to steal all these people's money and livelihood and make it so that Critical Role, the biggest thing in the world, has to give us all this money.
Critical Role has been just the best thing on the planet for D&D, and to turn around and knife them in the back like that was just, I mean, I don't agree necessarily with all of Critical Role's business practices, but again, why did nobody go, hang on, wait a minute, this might not be the best optics for us? Yeah.
Especially at the same time that you're trying to get everybody's opinion on something you're releasing. So I hope that it eventually, some people get pushed towards other ones. I would really like to. I was actually just thinking about this today, that my friend, what was the name of the game? Gloom something.
Gloomhaven.
Yes. My friend has been asking me to play that game for the longest time, and I'm like, finally, like, let's do it. Like,
It's a decent game.
yeah. So
Yeah. I
it
mean,
doesn't.
it's a tabletop dungeon crawler rather than your classic RPG, but it's if I would encourage you to give Jaws of the Lion a try first, because that's just so much easier to play and set up. Whereas Gloomhaven, I mean, it's about that deep, that wide. It's massive. Whereas Jaws of the Lion is actually a reasonable size.
Yeah. I guess my point is less so like that it has to be that game, and more so just like, you know, get something else going. Like, try
Yeah.
another thing out. Right. I've been interested in Pathfinder for a while, but just like haven't gotten around to it. So
Yeah, I know that feeling. And I suppose that's kind of my argument is D&D is easily the most popular, but and most well known. But I would be if you were to put a gun against my head, I would never be able to say it was the best at anything. If you wanted any element of 5e's gameplay, there is a better version of it somewhere else. But you've got to go looking for it. I mean, I am a massive fan of Free League stuff. So they're my go-to, the One Ring, Coriolis, Dragonbane, and all that. And, and Rowan Rook and Deckard, just great stuff. But they'll never have the clout that Hasbro does. So,
yeah.
it's just one of those things.
Yeah. D&D does not do anything particularly great. So,
no, but it does it all well enough, and that's, and that isn't that what we tell our clients? You don't have to do anything amazingly; you just have to be good enough at what you do.
Yeah, and I think to that same point as a therapeutic thing, but a point about D&D too is like the worst time I ever had playing D&D was running a pre-baked campaign, and the same thing for like other people is like make your own life, like live your own thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like anytime that I've played D&D in like a built world by a DM, so much better than the one time I played like a Icewind Dale and I was like, this is terrible. Like it's chunky, it feels awkward. The person doesn't know enough, and then like you go into somebody's actual world and it's like, oh, like we can actually live inside, like experience life, right? And I think that's the same thing for so many clients where like they come in and it's like, well, you're kind of trying to live somebody else's life. Like you're not experiencing what's in front of you. You're trying to like hit some markers you believe in your head is like a successful life. So.
Was that Rime of the Frost Maiden, the one you played? Yeah, I've got a soft spot in my heart for Icewind Dale simply because the R.A. Salvatore books were were set there, and they were kind of my first ever intro into D&D stuff. And I've always liked tundra settings anyway. But yeah, as campaigns go, they're better, aren't they?
And I'm not throwing them all out in one like
no.
Like every single pre-made campaign is bad. I'm just simply saying like, connecting it to like real world for people of like sometimes you just need to like make your own path, build your own world, like, which I think that's the thing about like, RPG and kind of the therapeutic mindset that's so valuable is it kind of forces people to like I said a minute ago, it forces people to get outside their own head and and it's all about how you then interact with the people around you as opposed to what can you do. Like, playing an RPG forces you to think about the people around you more than just yourself, because you have to ask the DM for clarification. You have to like talk to other players, and it's all communication. It's not like, it's just like, hey, what are we doing here? There's nothing beyond that. So,
and that is systems work. the dictionary definition of working with internal systems, isn't it? It's in a therapeutic setting. You aren't, it's no man is an island, and you have to work with the people around you, but on your own terms, rather than necessarily, as you say, living life according to other people's values.
Yeah.
And have you used DM skills or anything like that with clients? Do you bring how have you intermarried? It made sense in my head. How have you brought RPG stuff?
So from a DM perspective, I'm relatively new. I have DM'd now 3 times. You can watch it online at youtube.greatchaos, GR8KHOAS. Put a link below. So from a DM perspective, I haven't done a ton of that, but just the ability to I think for me, it's less so like a direct route of we're going to do RPG. And it's more just like the skills of being able to manage and communicate in that situation where when you're sitting in a table playing an RPG or online, you very much are reading what the other person across from you is saying. Right. And you can start to notice when they're switching out of, to use internal family systems language, out of self and into a part. And when that happens, then you're able to okay, I'm not talking to this person sitting in front of me. I'm talking to something else kind of in a way. And that's the same way where when you play an RPG, if you have a good DM, after the first session, they'll never refer to you by your name, right? They're always talking to your character. Okay. Yeah, and I think that's the same thing where it's allowed me to sit there with a client and be very connected to them beyond just what's in front of them. This is a good story of what I'm kind of trying to say with this. I have this one client and I was sitting with her and something in my brain was telling me this person, she's got it all together. Look at on her surface. She's dressed nice. Right. And my brain is just what am I doing therapy with this person? She's got everything together. And then I could make the switch of okay, but that's just what you're seeing on the surface. That's just the character. Right. And so I think that's kind of where the RPG mindset kind of comes into it, where I can not look at them just as what I'm seeing on the surface, but I can be but I'm communicating with the character. I'm communicating with what's below the surface or what's presented. Right. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And it's very easy for all of us to hide behind the surface. We project that character onto the words. The whole Johari window business. There's part of you that everybody sees, part of you that only you see, part of you that everybody else sees but you don't see, and then obviously the unknown part that works in the background. And yeah, the first job for a lot of us as therapists is to go, okay, yeah, look, I've met the character. It's time to, it's going to be scary, it's going to be painful, but let's try and bring you into the room.
Yeah.
And that can be, very almost traumatic for some clients. And that's why you've got to be as gentle as humanly possible. But also that's kind of why we relate so well to our fictional characters in the RPGs, because as we were saying, it's you cannot not put yourself into your character. And so when you are playing as this half-orc barbarian, as this human swashbuckling rogue, whoever it happens to be, because there's a part of you in them, you're like, no, don't, no, they can't die. I will not let you kill them. No. And I mean, that therapeutically, that's just gold dust, because we can just go, how are you feeling about all of this? But for, and you know, just talking as a normal player, just sitting in a game with friends, it can be like, no, don't do this to me. I can't.
I don't want to have to think about building a new character.
You mentioned Rime of the Frost Maiden. That exact campaign, when we played through it, my character just got turned to stone, just instantly. Just I had to roll a die. If I didn't make the save, that was it. I didn't make the save, so I was like, okay, well, I best make another character then, hadn't I? And I was almost in shock. I'm not one of these people who gets overly protective of characters simply because, you know, they're fictional. But at the same time, it's that there is still a connection. There's still a relationship there. It's like, oh, okay, well, I've got to unlearn playing with that character and now relearn with playing with this other character.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very, as you say, in internal family systems, is just, it's okay, well, let's try and pull back from that particular character and kind of build up this superhero character, or this caring character.
Well, and I also think there's something to be said for like throughout life, you as a person are going to like change characters. Okay, I put that in quotes because changing characters is a little maybe extreme for what I'm trying to say there, but you get my point, right? It's like you're going to go from like, you know, a high school student to a, you know, single college university student to a to a married adult, to a married adult with kids, like, and you're going to be changing these characters where like pieces of you are like what you present to the world has changed, right?
Mhm.
You know, like I have a friend who recently was going through it, or is still, I think, going through a divorce, and it's like he's a completely different person now, right? He is now like not in like a truly completely different person, but like, you know, he now like is all about his kids, which he used to be not quite as about it. He's somewhat more angry, right? Now he's a little more barbarian, like, you know, he's like all this stuff kind of comes to the forefront, and so you're kind of playing a new character, right?
Mhm.
And some of that's really good and some of that's really negative, and you kind of got to figure out what that looks like, right? In the same way we're like from a D&D perspective, you're supposed to write out your uh like your flaws and your like good things and all that kind of stuff, which nobody does. And
I'll have you know that I do it every time. I just
really,
never reference it.
oh, you're the only person I know then that ever writes anything in that section. So good for you. uh, but point being, you know, and you kind of have that same thing going in your life, and that stuff kind of changes and comes to the forefront more throughout your life. And then you kind of have to work on that stuff, right? And in the same way you're playing an RPG and you have to like your character starts out at a certain point with a certain level of knowledge and a certain perspective, and hopefully by the time you get to level like, you know, whatever the top level is in your game, your character is something new, right? And I think that arc is very valuable for people to see, of like, you know, Superman didn't start out as Superman started out as Clark Kent, a little boy on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, actually, no. Superman started out as this toddler with his wiener out, holding his arms up to Pa Ma Kent,
yeah,
and before he became, I still never quite got why they showed us full frontal of a toddler in that Christopher Reeve film. But you know,
those
this,
Christopher Reeves films are interesting. They're like so greatly remembered, and every time I go back and watch them, I'm just like, what is happening? So
absolutely mental, I think. But and that's so that character growth. I mean, you mentioned Jungian therapy earlier. Obviously, there's a lot of I can never remember. I want to say anabasis, but it's not, because that is the March Up River. The descent into the underworld. What's the the word for that? That anyway, the hero's journey, you know, the character goes down, has to face all of these traumatic events, find a mentor, find inner strength, get the golden fleece, whatever it is they're looking for, and then make their way back. And by the time they've come back, by the time they've completed their journey, that's, you know, therapeutically where hopefully they're in a position to go back out into the world and relate to it in a healthier, more stable manner.
Yeah, I do think something that's always interesting, like from a maybe maybe this is a cultural thing from where I'm at in the world versus where you're at, but like one of the things that I personally believe holds people back therapeutically, so like to the hero's journey, one of the things that holds people back therapeutically from moving forward with that is if you think about the Lord of the Rings, at the end, Frodo doesn't get to just stay, right? Like he has like kind of transcended past his home, right? Okay. Now he's got a mortal wound and all that kind of stuff, right? Okay. So that's a whole nother conversation. But I think that lots of the times in a place like where I am, it's like one of the hardest things to get people to do is to be like, you might have to like not stay at home. Like you might have to leave, like whether that's just leave or whether that's actual physical movement. And I think a lot of times people are very hesitant to get to that point. They want to get to like the part where Sam says, "This is the furthest from Hobbiton I've ever been," and then they're like, "That's good. I grew.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah,
I feel stronger. I took one extra step." But then when you tell them like, "No, there's actually this huge adventure out there," but on the other side of it, you're not coming back to the same thing, right? I think that's a whole conversation that like people just don't understand. In the same way, like from an RPG perspective, again, it's like your person starts out on one journey, and if you play your character well, by the time you get to the end, that journey is so far in the rearview mirror, you probably forgot what even happened.
Yeah.
So,
and the great thing about RPG, I came into RPGs from an author's point of view. My first RPGs were all, you know, writing exercises because I came in as a fiction author originally. And what I've always appreciated about the just the RPG as a thing is the fact that it just allows us to embody characters, but just follow a story. You know, there is nothing static about it. You know, you play this character and they're going to change inevitably. You know, even if you try and keep them the same, they're going to be different because you'll have leveled up. They'll have a new weapon. They've figured out how they can operate in conjunction with the other people in their party. And I've got no idea where I was going with that particular thought, but that's where I was going with it, because we're talking about Jungian. Remember, kids, don't get old.
it's late there, isn't it? It's like what, 9:30?
10:30.
Oh jeez. Yeah, see, it's only 5:30 here. I haven't even eaten dinner, so.
Oh, so I had breakfast. Does that count? But yeah, and obviously Jung, especially, is there was an article I read not that long ago about using fairy tales in a Jungian setting, and again he brought in all the Greek myths as well, and we mentioned dream work earlier on. All of these are, you know, fundamentally based in stories. And as I say, what is an RPG if not an interactive storytelling exercise?
Yeah.
Do you have a particular favorite moment RPG wise, or favorite character, or a word of warning for people?
Ooh. My word of warning is keep searching for a good group. Like just because you have one bad experience does not mean all RPGs are bad. like, and that you will never have fun, because like I got lucky enough, I fell into my group like right away, and like we have been together now for, oh man, almost 2 years just straight. Like we've been just playing together straight for 2 years. Our group has grown. Like we started out as like, I think 6 people, and now we're to, in the total group of people, because there's the main campaign on this channel and then there's like my little mini campaign. I think there's 13 people. So like big group of people,
That's
right?
a big group, isn't it?
Yeah. But then I played another time when I did the Rime of the Frost Maiden, which maybe I'm biased against that because of this experience. But that was just not, it was just wasn't a good experience. The group didn't gel well. Nobody was really having fun. Like it was just kind of like meh. And so we left that. That was the first time my wife played too. So it took some convincing to get her to come play with the group I'm in still. So my word of caution is keep searching, find people if you can. Okay. It's 2023, play online, do what you got to do. Right. Okay. I have always played in person. Tons of people play online and have tons of success. So you can have fun with that. Find a group. That's my word of caution. Favorite moments? Oh man. I'm trying to think. So my first ever character that I played, I'll tell this story because it's kind of, I enjoy it. First ever character I played was a ranger, like a hunter ranger in D&D. Okay, super basic class, but it was the first time I ever played. I started out, and at first I was like, okay, I have a bow, but then I also I had like a warhammer or something like that. So my DM gets me trapped, my character trapped in this like bar, like this cop bar, basically, like it's where all the guards are, and I can't get out. So I run over and I try to swing with my warhammer, and I roll like a natural one, and there's a guy standing there. So I basically just like eliminate this guy from the face of the earth. I crushed this guy. And then I managed to like eventually get outside. My illusionist wizard like cast an illusion on the now dead guy laying on the ground. So he looked like a bad guy. And then we convinced the entire town that I had actually killed a bad guy. Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah. So then right after that, I handed my Warhammer to our fighter, and we played that campaign for a year and a half. And I never again took used like a melee weapon. I used the bow the rest of the time. So I like kept it as my character arc for the entire time we played, that I would not ever like swing another weapon. And then anytime I got inside later on, I would start to freak out as I go along. The longer my character was inside, the more he would start to just do stupid things. It was tons of fun.
Because it's little things like that that just make an RPG. And obviously, in terms of using RPGs with clients, just giving them little moments. Because I felt mildly traumatized by that description, just by feeling what's coming from you, and just I was like, oh no, I'm going to. And what we were saying earlier, the characters changed. So that character's like, I full of bravado. Yeah, I can do that. Oh my god, I'm never doing that again. Just
done.
Just I'm out.
Yeah. And then I would like always have him like, because then he's like a sharpshooting ranger. So then he would start getting like trapped in melee combat. But I'd just be like, oh, I'm shooting at disadvantage because I'm not pulling out a weapon. Like I literally my character did not have a hand-to-hand weapon for the rest of the year and a half. He never had anything.
And that can be a great, giving yourself, it's not even a flaw. It's actually hampering your playability as a character. It's if you're gonna, that's the kind of thing that would make min maxers cringe.
Yeah.
I played a cleric in a campaign a while ago who was terrified of the undead, and which was a bit of an issue, being as much it was the Ghost of Saltmarsh, so it was mostly undead enemies. And so to begin with, he just, as soon as he saw anything undead, he just pelted it, and just and got to the door and just realized it was closed and just spammed Sacred Flame. And then as time went by, he kind of
overcame it.
Yeah, and that was, even though it was completely premeditated, it wasn't, I had to say, okay, so now he's a bit more okay with it. It still gives you that satisfaction of being able to see this person who you come to care about just grow as an individual.
Oh yeah, I mean, I still have that character that I played. His name was Sam, and I still have his first name, and I still just he's my guy. If I ever get a chance to play him again, because we only got to 6th level or something like that, so we might go back to it at some point. I will be yes, I am in. I will continue to play this character forever. So yeah,
and that's I mean, RPGs, I will get on a soapbox and just proselytize about them as self-care exercises, because you just kind of fall in love with these characters, and you can do so much with that. You can write stories, you can paint, you can world build around them. There's just so much you can do, and all through the power of imagination and teamwork with other people.
Yeah, and to the point we were kind of talking about earlier, right, where it's all the characters are a part of you, made bigger, right, made more extreme. And so it's in addition to self-care, it's kind of self-love. You're kind of I love the parts of me that are even flawed, and that there's some value in that too.
That's an amazing way of looking at it. I'd never looked at it like that before. Huh. That's cool. I like that. Yeah, I'd never thought of it like that before.
Yeah. Well, because if you're creating something that's similar to you, right, in some ways, then you have to become okay with whatever that character is, right? You can't, because we all know that person that starts as I'll pick on somebody in my group right now, starts out as a cleric and then doesn't ever do cleric things, and you're like, what are you doing? But you all know the person who can manage to accept the weaknesses of their character. And I think the same thing is true of us as people, right, where it's can we accept our weaknesses and then grow from it? So I think that's something that RPGs really teach us to do.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here thinking, if you can learn to love your character and they've got the flaws that you yourself have, then it's only a short step going, well, if you can love them for those flaws, any chance you can love yourself?
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, there's no other word for that than beautiful. It's yeah.
Yeah. Well, I never mind that, also the idea of, to pull a kind of comic book perspective to it too, of every single comic book hero has weaknesses, right? And and usually fatal ones, right? I mean, Superman's probably arguably the strongest superhero in comic books, right? And it's literally a little green rock, and he's oh, I'm dead, right? I'm gonna just pass out, right? And so allowing people then to play those superheroes, and their superheroes still have flaws, right? Because if you look at have you ever watched the YouTube channel Dungeon Dudes? Have you heard of these guys?
Oh yeah, of course.
And they do this series where they take one class and they try to build the best 4-person class.
Yes.
And it's certain ones you look at and you're okay, you could build 4 classes of cleric and be fine. That's pretty easy. But then they get to rogues and they're this is going to be a little tricky. How are we going to make this work? And it's like, because every single class has these weaknesses, right? These massive problems that they're lacking in, just like people do. So
yeah. I've just spotted the time, Adam, so I'm afraid we're going to have to call it a day in a moment or two. But I think that's, yeah, there are so many lessons we can learn from stories, RPGs, but character work generally. We've just got to kind of be open to it. And we had a conversation just before we started about the lack of openness in our profession to things like this. And yeah, I mean, that's part of why I created this channel, was to just try and spread the word, because there's just so much we can do with this. And yet people just are still going, RPGs, nah, it's for nerds, come on.
yeah, the same people who are still saying that to things like, you know, EMDR, trauma informed yoga, like stuff like that, where they're like freaking out and saying, "Oh, that's stuff's stupid," and you're like,
Yeah.
"Okay, sure."
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, how about you try it and then come back? But
yeah,
been burned by that before.
Me too.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. Look, Adam, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've been doing this for not that long, but every time somebody comes on and I have a chat with them, I just kind of fall half in love with the person. So it's been an absolute pleasure meeting you. Thanks for coming
You
along.
as well.
Would you like to tell the one or two people who turn up to watch this where they can find you?
Yeah. So this is my Instagram handle, the Manly Counselor. I post there semi regularly. Don't expect me to be super regular. Open Chair Counseling is our business website for where I practice therapy out of. I think we're going to soon start posting in our blog there a little bit more. So if you want to see some of my writing, and then Great Chaos, link in the description, is where you can watch me stream D&D every Sunday night if you want. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Beautiful stuff. And yeah, as you mentioned, links below. So if you're in the Western Michigan area, yeah, give Adam a call. And because apparently there's only 6 of you for 500,000 people, so you're not overworked at all, I'm sure.
Not at all.
It's been an absolute pleasure, sir. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Cheers.